Well, it is Thursday, the 9th day of July. Glad you could join us right here on Morning Cafe, TV47, home of Untold Story. It's time to take you through what is happening in the world of news and also kickstart your day on a very interesting note, updating you, entertaining you, ensuring that you're informed on matters education, informed on matters what is happening on the global fraternity. We also have a special segment later on where we'll be discussing more to do with health. We'll be delving deep into understanding a certain condition that I'll update you of as we proceed, or better yet, Group B, strep. Very important that you understand that it's the awareness month of the same. So we are here to ensure that you keep you updated. Welcome on board. My name is Linda Alela. As always, we have so much in store for you, right from this particular time all the way to 9 a.m. in the morning. I'll have a series of guests who will be joining me to expound some more on the discussions that we'll be having this morning, taking a look at issues that are affecting you where you are and, across the globe as we put a comprehensive look on the same. So karibu sana. As always, that we'll start with the newspaper review. And also we take a look at the stories that have been prepared by my team. And even as the world continues to grapple with COVID-19, we have so issues that are cropping up in terms of, giving us lessons and also giving us troubles and, putting us at that catch-22 situation where we have to figure out what next. Such has been the case in the country for a while right now, for some months, grappling on whether we're supposed to proceed to reopen the activities in different parts of the schools in the country. And of course, the interfaith, team coming on board to come up with measures of reopening places of worship and different sectors. The tourism sector also facing it rough in terms of, a reduction of the profits that they're used to making. Now talking about 80 billion losses that have been registered so far. So quite much unfortunate, but you also take a look at the events that are taking center stage, the losses that we've had as a fraternity in Africa. We'll be updating you on the same, and also the gains that we are making right here as the likes of Honorable Ambassador Amina Mohammed are getting pluses, and we'll be having these candid discussions. You get to know what exactly I mean when I say that. So karibu once again. But first things first, let's take a look at these stories prepared by my team, and we start off on matters education, as Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has ordered all school heads to refund or carry forward school fees that had initially been paid by the parents for second and third terms consecutively. Now, speaking from Taita Taveta County, Magoha clarified that fees will only be refunded if a parent had paid in advance. Let's take a look at that.
Just a day after Education CS Professor Magoha declared 2020 a lost academic year, school heads in primary and secondary schools are now required to refund second and third term fees to parents who had paid in advance.
Let us be realistic here. The first term's fees was spent and it is lost. So don't even think that we are going to sit down with you to waste time saying, there were 10 days in first term. That one is not going to be there. Second term was not there. So somebody who had paid for it in advance should be refunded.
Magoha was speaking at the Coast Institute of Technology in Taita Taveta County, where he had gone to meet with TVET principals.
Second term, if you had paid earlier, it will be refunded to you, or it should go into account for the second term. Yeah. And third term. I don't know why Kenyans are very complicated people. It's simple and straightforward.
Earlier, there was a proposal to have this year's candidates resume learning in September. Then came the idea of putting a maximum of 15 to 20 learners in a class, which also did not succeed, as it would require for schools to have additional classrooms and additional teachers.
And with the crowding in our schools, it would be practically impossible to think about opening soon.
Learners in grade 1 to 4, standard 5 to 7, as well as form 1 to 3 will remain in their current classes in 2021, even as this year's candidates are expected to sit their national examinations in 2021. Andreen Kilemi for TV 47.
And still on matters education, the directive by the Ministry of Education to suspend primary and secondary school education until next year is set to disrupt expectations of many students in the country. Among them are Class 8 and Form 4 students who had envisioned a transition to another education level at the end of 2020 education calendar. Our reporter David Muthoka tells of the intrigues awaiting these students, with schools are set to resume in January 2021.
The declaration of the 2020 academic calendar as null and void by the government landed the last nail on the coffin regarding the likelihood of a resumption of primary or secondary school education this year. This directive seemingly disrupting students across each level of education, a retake of the current calendar come 2021, now inevitable. To the newbies fresh from joining new schools, they now will have to learn the ropes for a second year running. Among them are Shanice and Samantha Masharia in Mempley Estate in Ruiru, Kiambu County. Both are currently Form 1 students at St. Francis Mangu Girls and Precious Blood Limuru respectively. No sooner had they reported in their new schools than the government ordered all schools closed. Their stay at home has since been extended for the remainder of the year, with the government stating that a possible reopening will happen in January. Besides them being identical twins, this does not stop them from differing on what the government ought to have done in a bid to breathe life to the education sector.
I think that they would have let first the Form 4s in the Class 8 to go back to school first, maybe early that term or ending of second term. If we go back to school, they'll have to force some people to go back home, because we can't like stay 15 in a class because we don't have a lot of classes. And like at the dorms, like you can't social distance at the dorms.
Doom has further been spelt on this year's KCSE and KCPE candidates. These Class 8 and Form 4 students who are literally counting their chicks awaiting hatching will have to put hold to that until next year. In this case, we meet Jen Mudhoni, a Form 4 student at Kamahua Girls High School in Muranga County. Alongside her is her younger brother Lewis Mwangi. Ever since schools closed, Jen has been burying herself into her books in anticipation of a sooner reopening. With that no longer the case, she and her brother will have to maintain their studying camaraderie for the next 5 months.
Wangesema candidates warudi peke yao kwa sababu sisi tunakalia KCSE na Class 8 KCPE, so naonelea candidates wangerudi mbele ya wengine kwa sababu we really need to sit for that exam.
In Eldoret town, Form 4 student Shazin and Class 8 pupil Mary Wanjiku have a similar experience.
Hatuko sure ka tutafanya next year, tuko 50-50 lakini tukiwa tunasoma then tuna give up.
Hii mambo ya corona imetuaffect sana kwa masomo. Tutapata kwa tulikuwa tumepanga target yetu ya KCPE.
Another tale of agony engulfs those in their penultimate classes. The path to finishing school seamlessly has been thrown into a limbo. A few meters around Jen's block is Peter Njuge, a Class 7 pupil who was awaiting the candidacy status come 2021. But for him, this bicycle is set to be his pen and paper, his ambitions of completing primary school next year crushed. Now, with the education calendar 2020 having ground to a halt, most students in primary and secondary schools have been forced to adapt with the changing tide.
Matatu operators are now blaming the government for the implementation of extreme rules in the fight against COVID-19. Rules, they say, are blocking most vehicles from getting back on the road.
Uvae mask na usanitize ndio kwa gari ndio hiyo ugonjwa nayo iko chini.
The operators are also complaining about the tedious procedure set in getting a certification from the Transport Ministry, as the government is seen to be extra cautious in governing the sector during this pandemic.
These protocols cover the following: public education, that is, provision of timely and consistent COVID-19 information to enhance passenger safety. 2, the protocols also involve or include physical distancing where physical distancing is not possible or feasible. Border adequate risk-based measures shall be used. The use of face masks is also covered in the detailed protocols. Routine sanitation, rapid health screening, and hand washing.
They're now calling upon the government to ease the containment measures put in place in order to revive a sector on its knees.
Zaomba tu serikali ipunguze makali ambayo umeweka kwa watu wa magari ili na sisi kama wanabiashara tusije tukaumia.
For TV47, I'm Zainab Mohammed.
And now, passengers and tourists from outside the country who will not show any COVID-19 symptoms will not be forced to mandatory quarantine. This is according to Transport CS James Macharia, who has issued protocols to be followed in the transport sector. Meanwhile, the Madaraka Express will resume on Monday next week and will transport 50% passengers with an isolation center. Mumbi Chege reports.
Transport operators across the country are embarking on complying with the guidelines issued by the government before resuming operations. This is after President Uhuru Kenyatta lifted a ban on cessation of movement into and out of Nairobi, Mombasa and Mandera counties. The Ministry of Transport has the protocols that must be complied by every transport operator in a bid to curb a further spread of COVID-19 in the country.
All travel shall be in strict conformity with all protocols from the Ministry of Health and any additional guidelines applicable to the different modes of transport. After consultations with a cross-section of stakeholders, we have developed additional protocols that will apply specifically to road, rail, and air transport.
For public transport operators, they'll have to enforce physical distancing in public transport, facilitate contact tracing, manage any suspected COVID-19 cases, and initiate public education in order to enhance public safety. In the railway transport, the Madaraka Express will commence operations on Monday the 13th of this month and will depart Nairobi at 8 a.m. and arrive in Mombasa at 12:45 a.m. The train departing from Mombasa will arrive in Nairobi at 6:45 p.m. and will only be allowed to carry 50% of the total capacity. The train will have an isolation center. Airports will be restricted to passengers and staff except for persons who need help, so as to minimize physical contact between the crew and passengers and limited physical contact between security officers and passengers, as well as airport staff and luggage. Passengers arriving from outside the country will not be forced to mandatory quarantine if they do not exhibit any symptoms of COVID-19.
Where layovers are necessary, crew members shall not be allowed to leave their hotels, their hotel rooms, except in cases of emergency. All passengers shall be exempt from quarantine on arrival at their destinations if their body temperatures is not above 37.5 degrees Celsius and they do not have a persistent cough, difficulty in breathing, and other flu-like symptoms. This is important because you do not expect a tourist to come from wherever. They land here and then they are quarantined for 14 days. Nobody will come here.
The protocols come 2 days after President Uhuru Kenyatta lifted the ban on cessation of movement into and out of Nairobi and Mombasa. A majority of Kenyans hopeful that the respective transport sectors will comply with the set guidelines, enabling them to travel. Mumbi Chege, TV47.
And coupling that with the stories on the newspaper to expound some more on the same, Tabitha Rugutu joins me this morning. Thank you so much for your time, Tabitha.
Linda.
And straight to it, 3 stories that we've captured right now and are equally captured on the People Daily, which is a newspaper that we'll be looking at this morning. And before we even delve into the aspect of politics and what our legislatures are doing to represent us as captured on the front page, let's take a look at this story of the schools and the order to refund fees, reacting to an outcry of parents over money already paid to learning institutions. I think upon that declaration that schools will reopen in 2021 January, parents were out here saying that it will be unfair because the majority of them, or some of them, had already paid for school fees, and it felt like it was a rip-off. And finally, that reprieve coming from the government. I don't know how it's going to be easy to strike the balance, but I would love to hear your take on the same, and also on a story that we are captured and what, in regards to, what it is like for the students who are hoping to transition to the next level.
Linda, I think that the fact that the government has looked into the possibility of refunding the paid school fee for the parents who had already cleared their fee for the academic year 2020 is a well thought of idea, because the parents were not sure if in the coming academic year they were going to pay again, and yet they had paid, so they are able to budget. Now, also in relation to that, you've said that there are parents or students who still, like the position they're having of whether to go, that the government said they're going to reopen school in 2021, the secondary schools and the primary schools, has been received in different ways. Some students feel this is not a very good thing, that prepare themselves ready for the examinations. Others also feel that this is a great opportunity for them to even do better in the coming year. But what we can say, as per what the Ministry of Health and even the government said through our President Uhuru Kenyatta, is that the safety of all these students come first. So either way, you are expecting to sit for your examinations at the end of this year, or you are anticipating sitting for the exams in 2021. For those students who feel like they were ready and they wanted to do the exams, you have another opportunity to even work extra smart and hard so that you can have the best grades come next year. And for those students who also, and the parents who feel that the government made the right decision, you should also look into ways that would ensure that your child studies even when they're at home, and they are observant of what the Minister of Education said. You should keep them busy so that they don't get involved in things that are not of a student-like.
And also coming on to another story that we've touched on in regards to the state of the roads right now, state of transport as it stands right now. Kenya Railways shall deploy 10 coaches for passengers with a total one-way capacity of 600 passengers, or 50% capacity. We've touched on that story, and it seems like it's not business as usual on the roads, because in as much as we all expected that maybe the vehicles will be back and running, traversing different parts of the country, after that cessation lift of course from Nairobi, Mombasa and Mandera, it clearly is not the case, because drivers are complaining that the measures that have been put on board are too much for them to handle, are too much for them to manage. Are we likely to experience a scenario that we did at the level of the borders, when the truck drivers were crying out foul that the testing processes take longer, you probably do not get the results as in time, and it's even worse because there's so much frustration when you try to cross from this point to the other point?
Yes, I think that if we do not look into the system that has been put in place to ensure that the drivers are tested before they can embark on their journeys to different destinations, then we can experience the same situation we saw at the borders earlier, the beginning of onset of COVID-19. But I can say that according to what I saw yesterday, the Transport Minister categorically stated that he is going to ensure that this process is faster, because it's a matter of making sure that what the government said. They say that the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi was lifted. So that can only mean that if this process was to be successful, then they also have to play their part. And if you as a driver or somebody who is operating a public service vehicle knows of the regulation put in place, they're not meant to make your lives difficult, but they're meant to ensure that the lives of the citizens and even the people boarding these passenger service vehicles' life is at a safe place. Therefore, it's so imperative that all the drivers and all the circles, as the Cabinet Secretary for Transport said yesterday, adhere to these rules and follow them to the letter. Because at the end of the day, we don't want the government to give us a lockdown again and say that you cannot move from this place to the other place because we have flouted the rules. So it's very important for us to practice our civic obligations. Yes.
And that aside, of course, this story is captured on different pages of the People Daily, on Matters Education page 4 and 5, and on the Transport Matters, of course, page 6 of the People Daily. But still on COVID-19, after the outbreak of COVID-19, cases on mental illnesses and depression have risen sharply. The Kenya Counselors and Psychologists Association now wants the government to utilize their services. The practitioners feel they are not recognized even when the services are needed the most. Joash Onsari reports.
At a time when the country is battling COVID-19, Kenyans are facing mental health challenges linked to hard times prompted by the pandemic. Some falling into depression and others even committing suicide. The Kenya Counselors and Psychologists Associations have now come out to demand recognition by the government since they are frontline service providers in the society.
We would wish to help the Kenyans to process different informations as they come in. Like yesterday, now the schools are supposed to open 1 year later. What is going on in the mind of the students? What is going on in the mind of the parents? What is going on in the minds of the teachers? These are things that are taken so lightly, but they are things that bring other effects later in life.
They want to be incorporated in the Ministry of Health to make it easy for them to access facilities that require counseling and psychological services.
We are actually on the front line dealing with the healthcare workers. But you must understand there are so many bureaucracies and protocols. So even if we go to a particular hospital and the medical superintendent does not allow us to get in there, then it becomes quite a challenge. And this is why we want a collaborative effort within the Ministry of Health, that we can be able to be given direct access.
Moffat Kago, a psychologist and a family therapist, says if quacks are allowed to operate, the condition of depression victims will only get worse.
We request the government to implement the Counselors and Psychologists Act of 2014 that would help to protect the public against impersonators and masqueraders who, without any training, continue with quack practice, offering false counseling and therapies, providing false diagnosis and prognosis, which either injures the public irreparably or make the bad situation even worse.
Experts have found out that mental health is contributed by biological, psychological, and environmental factors, but how common is it in the society?
Every single person who has got a mind has the capability of going mad, right? And when you do that, every single person in Kenya has the capability of being affected by mental health.
Joash Onsare, TV 47, Nairobi.
Right, and to couple up all the stories that are ongoing in regards to COVID-19, Tabitha, there's one that was, of course, that has been captured here that was a determinant factor on whether we're going to have ease of restrictions or not. And now the counties are in a rush to ensure that they attain the 300 bed capacity condition, which was one of the irreducible minimums that was expected if at all the country was to proceed and reopen. And now the Council of Governor chairperson, that is Oparanya, says that as of yesterday, 26 counties had beaten deadline issued by President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is, of course, in regards to ensuring that, yes, we are able to deal with the health issues in the country. And also a story that has been captured here, hospitals in acute shortage of ICU beds on COVID-19 war. Where does this place us? And was it a right move for the president to proceed and reopen? Or is some of the restrictions amid the knowledge or cognizant to the fact that indeed counties had not been successful in terms of what were the irreducible minimums?
I think that the government partly did well reopening the economy because many people were suffering. Many people lost their source of livelihoods, and life became so unbearable. A very good example is for those people, for example, who were evicted from Kariobangi the other month. These people, some of them, we saw them complaining and saying, now we have been evicted, or our houses have been demolished. There is nowhere we can go, and also the cessation of movement has been restricted. We cannot get out of Nairobi. So at least these people are able to go back to their homes and practice safety rules there. But at the same time, the government or the president said that for this phased reopening of the economy to be successful, then the county governors or the county government has to be prepared to meet the requirements for the same, which included having a minimum or a maximum bed capacity for just in case there is rising numbers of coronavirus cases in the counties. And I can say that according to what I heard yesterday, the chair of the Council of Governors saying that 26 counties already have met what we will term as the requirement for them to have the capacity to even deal with the coronavirus patients if there will be any that will arise. So that is quite a pointer towards progress and how successful the process of reopening economy can become even in the near future. So what we want to see moving forward is other governors following suit, because it's in my mind, or it's just something that all of us would expect, that all these counties are given the same resources, to boost, unless you are from the marginalized society, the marginalized counties, which are also considered. So if 26 counties had managed, to prepare in advance and even meet the requirement by the government so that we can have the phased reopening of the economy, what is so difficult for the other counties to follow suit? Again, Linda, if I can add a little bit about this, yes. I would say that this is also coronavirus, like yesterday Governor Paranya said, it's like a blessing in disguise, because we've seen in the recent times, or even in the past years, that some of the counties did not even have the ICU beds or even the capacities, to deal with the patient, the inpatients. But now coming of coronavirus and the increase of ICU and the facilities in these hospitals, even after coronavirus pandemic, which we hope at some time it will go away, they'll be able to, realize some level of development and even growth. And I think even the resources and the service delivered at these hospitals will be increased in a way that the common mwananchi or even the patients will be able to enjoy moving forward. So it's a good thing, yes.
All right. Well, of course, even as we talk about the issues of reopening or easing of restrictions, pastors now are criticizing the reopening protocols, and they vow to disregard some of them. This also, of course, is one of the stories that we've worked on, and a majority of them from the Rift Valley region. And they say that the wide guidelines issued by the Interfaith Council on reopening of places of worship have elicited, of course, dismissed reactions, with some of the members of the clergy threatening to disregard the directives on an age limit, asserting that the restrictions will limit freedom of worship. Let's take a look at what we had prepared, even as we come to wind up on the numbers of COVID-19 and more cases that are being reported, and the sad state of affairs as it continues.
Rift Valley religious leaders have threatened to disregard the Interfaith Council directives on age limit of those attending church services. The pastors have said the restrictions undermine freedom of worship.
Ukienda kwa masoko, ukienda kwa mikutano ya wakubwa, hakuna age. Sisi tu kanisa ndio tunapewa maneno ya age. Hiyo tunakataa. Na tunasema iangaliwe upya. Na hata kama haitaangaliwa, sisi tunaingia kanisani.
Hii sasa ni kutukazia. Heri basi tuache kwenda. Tungoje paka corona ishe.
They questioned the criteria for the phased reopening of places of worship, saying it is unfair to limit the number of worshippers per service to 100, adding that the number of worshippers should be determined by the size of the church.
Tukubaliwe tufanye mambo yetu kiheshima, tukiheshimu serikali yetu na utaratibu wa Ministry of Health, na pia makanisa yetu. Sisi ni watu wazima, tujipange vizuri tu, na naamini kutoka hapo matokeo watayaona.
Tuko na makanisa ambayo normally wanaingia watu 5,000, wanaingia watu 3,000. So tunauliza kwa hiyo regulation kwamba watu waingie kanisani kulingana na size ya kanisa.
The religious leaders claim that 70% of the church in rural areas have elders who are passionate about spreading the gospel, arguing that not all elderlies have underlying health issues.
Washiriki wengi katika nyumba za ibada ni wale ambao kwamba ni 40 na kuendelea. Lakini huku baina ya 20 watu wanakimbiza na dunia. Wazee washafanya shughuli zao za kidunia, washaitafutia mali yao, sasa wanamtafuta Mungu. Na kumtafuta Mungu unamtafuta katika nyumba za ibada.
Hawajaenda reserve up country, mahali makanisa ni ya watu wasee peke yao. Hivi ni kusema huko kwa up country watu wasiwe wakienda kanisa.
President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered for the phased reopening of places of worship that discourage those below the age of 13 and those above the age of 58 from attending public worship services. Muhammad Ali, TV47.
Still on the crisis that has been brought on board courtesy of COVID-19, over 250 health workers now infected. This is according to the reports from the Ministry of Health, which is quite unfortunate. And ministers say that state will provide more PPEs to ensure that the quarantine or to guarantee the safety of medics, or guarantee also the safety of the medics in the line of duty. I mean, what does it speak? This is unfortunate. Well, though one would argue that it was bound to happen anyway.
Yes, it's quite an unfortunate situation we are faced with, because we would have wanted to see that the safety and even the health of these frontline workers, like the nurses, are given a priority. I must say that the government is trying, but more effort is needed to ensure that they are safe, even as they try and, come one-on-one with these coronavirus patients, even during testing and even administering to them medication. So what we can say as a people is that the effort, or even what these front workers are doing, the nurses, the doctors, and everybody who is involved in this process as medics, is quite something that is worth appreciating first. But then the government needs to come up with ways and even intensify the safety of these people, and provide the PPEs adequately, so that their safety or even their health also is looked into, even as they provide services which are very essential to the citizens. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the numbers, now we stand at 8,528 as, of course, 200. That is, we have a recovery, and of course of 1,168 deaths so far, and 2,595 in terms of the recovery that we have, and the reported cases as of yesterday, 278 that tested positive out of a sample of 196 1,508. That is where we stand as of now, and it is pretty much unfortunate looking at the numbers across Africa and across the globe. The numbers continue to rise. The surge is out there taking an upward trajectory, which is pretty much unfortunate. We can only hope that soon, or of course the solution is nigh, even as the world continues to grapple and trying to figure out and pull the guesswork. All of course the scientists on board and virologists on board, just trying to see to it whether we are able to get a cure. If not a cure, then a vaccine. Now to some bit of politics in the section of Mount Kenya. That is a section of Mount Kenya leaders held a closed-door meeting in what appears to be consolidating their 2022 base. The leaders meeting at a time, Peter Kenneth, who was part of yesterday's meeting, seemed to be positioning himself to inherit Uhuru Kenyatta as the region's kingpin. So let's take a look at that as we come to expound some more.
This was among a series of political meetings by leaders from Mount Kenya region. The leaders now consolidating a region that has been divided by 2022 political stands. They have, however, denied claims of a divided region.
So we are not claiming any special position or any special interest as of now for Mount Kenya region. We want to fight for Kenya, and I think this is what the president is talking about. We want a united, peaceful and progressive Kenya, and for now I think the focus has been on coronavirus. We also want a coronavirus-free central Kenya.
Among those who attended the meeting was former Gatanga lawmaker Peter Kenneth, who in the recent day has been tossed to succeed Uhuru Kenyatta as the region's kingpin. Kenneth was recently in his Gatanga backyard defending Uhuru's administration. Meeting coming in the wake of Jubilee Party's purge that has claimed positions from Deputy President William Ruto's allies.
Mount Kenya region is part of Kenya, and the future is there for all of us. So we are congratulating Amos Kimunya because we know that you lead the National Assembly well as we go into the future as Kenyans. And the way of the Mount Kenya region will benefit from his leadership just like the other Kenyans.
The meeting coming after Deputy President William Ruto made a number of inroads in the regions. Recent meetings targeted at religious leaders from the region. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
And on page 2 of the People Daily, this story captured right here as gathering lays ground for debate on the BBI final report. That is in 2022, Uhuru Kenyatta's succession. And here we are, of course, also taking a look at another story that has been captured here. And this is in regards to another region, that is the Ukambani region. And former Senator Muthama warns Kamba to brace for opposition in the event that they still, of course, focus on following a Wiper Democratic leader, Wiper Democratic Movement leader, that is Kalonzo Musyoka, who, according to him, is described as a coward, was leading the community to the ditch. So this is all about regional, bodies of trying to, not regional bodies, but regions, trying to position themselves for the bigger bit of the cake come 2022. So as we talk of the Mount Kenya, unity, or the Mount Kenya chunk, or also the Ukambani region, also the Luhya unity are out here grappling to see to it that at least, they are going to be part and the parcel of people who are going to be on the table discussing the benefits of the country. What does it speak about the politics that we have at large, and the fact that we've always been saying that it's important to shun away from tribalism and front leaders based on ideologies, their manifestos that they present, as opposed to the areas that they come from?
That's a very good question, Linda. For a minute, if we can look at what the BBI provides or suggests, one of them, it was supposed to address majorly divisive politics. But this is what these leaders who also supports the BBI, they are supporting, or they are conducting divisive politics, like what we've seen with the Luhya community, or what we're now seeing with the Kamba community. Even at those levels of regional politics, they cannot have unity. Now, how will you be able to speak about the national unity in terms of politics if even at the regional levels we cannot speak of this? But if these leaders, they claim to be leaders who support the unity, they support the interest of all people of Kenya, then even during their meeting we should not be hearing things like, we as a Kamba community wants to elect so-and-so to lead us. Because if you become, for example, this is all in preparation for the presidential race of 2022. If you want to become a Kenyan leader or a Kenyan president, then we cannot have a situation whereby we have a Kenyan president elected on the basis of tribalism. So if you were to change the narration or even the music revolving around the history of tribalism in this country, then it has to be from the front line, the leaders who serve at the top, coming up and speaking the language of unity and even fighting the divisive politics and helping the BBI agenda to move forward. Because if at the same time we're saying that divisive politics is one of the key things, and primarily because of divisive politics is when we saw the former premier and even the current president Uhuru Kenyatta coming together and having a handshake, because people were divided on the lines of politics and ethnicity. So this is not something we want to see moving forward. Let all the leaders who hold these meetings be open to the fact that all Kenyans are watching them, and we will not want to choose leaders who are elected or put into the office on the basis of their ethnic backgrounds or where they come from. Let us speak the language of uniting Kenyans and even see that all Kenyans take part in electing the leaders, not just a section of where you come from.
All right, and now the Senate's Public Accounts and Investment Committee has called on the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, to fast-track investigations into the cybercrime fraudsters in which Kilifi County government lost up to 43 million shillings. Appearing before the committee, Kilifi Governor Amason King has said that the EACC has derailed the process of recovering the 43 million shillings, despite the county boss firing some of its county officers involved in the scam.
If you gave me and the committee comfort in terms of recoverability of this money, public monies are intended for service. It's bad enough that it got lost. Is it likely to be recovered? I know the services for which it was intended are lost because the services are time-based.
The intention was maybe to procure services and development for the people of Kilifi. It meant that it could not be successful. So those are my three concerns concerning this chair on this issue of trying to recover the money that might have been lost. So it is good you give us the status so that we can be able to make progress. Thank you.
When I look at this letter, these are civil cases. We do not have any criminal cases so far, which appears to have been filed pursuant to these cases. Any update on that, either from the governor or from the commission? Do you have any person who has been charged criminally because of these transactions?
That the stay was on all cases pertaining to the loss of 51 million. So there's no other case that is still ongoing. All cases were stayed pursuant to the orders that were obtained by EACC. And I think the EACC officer is here. She can be able to confirm that.
The chief executive of the county government to bring this matter to the fore. You have also exercised a legal option available to you to put this matter before the court of law. It now rests with the courts, but that does not prevent Senate from inquiring further into this contract and the nature of the contract and how we found ourselves landed with this matter.
Well, that after a series of governors have also appeared before the committee. As from last week, we've seen Kakamega Governor, that is Wycliffe Oparanya, for the first time, of course, appearing before the Senate. We've seen Charity Kaluki Ngilu also. We've seen Makueni Governor also, Kivutha Kibwana appearing before the Senate, and more governors are set to appear also in regards to ensuring that they speak of the accountability or the flow of events at the level of their counties. And speaking of which, also, we come to the House, and members of Parliament are out here, according to a story that has been captured here. Kapseret, Member of Parliament Oscar Sudi, is among members of Parliament who have never given a single contribution in Parliament. And of course, a report by the Mzalendo Trust has listed 19 members of Parliament who have never spoken in the floor of the House the entire term. Let's take a look at that story as we come and expound some more on it.
Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020.
A report released today on the performance of members of Parliament. 19 members of Parliament have never uttered any word in the House. In the National Assembly, among the 19 is Kapsaret's Oscar Sudi, Abdi Shuri of Balambala, and Alfred Sambu of Webuye East. 3 female members of Parliament have also never said a word in Parliament. The 3 are Rose Museu of Makweni, Beatrice Kones of Bomet East, and Amina Gedo of Mandera. The best performing members of Parliament at the National Assembly are Millie Odhiambo of Suba North, Wilberforce Ojiambo of Funyula, and Benson Makali of Kitui Central. The best performing senators are Ledama Olekina of Narok, Moses Wetangula of Bungoma.
Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020.
Out of 116 bills passed in the National Assembly, only 24 were assented to, translating to about 21%, the lowest in 5 years.
And here we go, and this is a story also that has been captured on the front page of the People Daily. Worst performers named here, the likes of Oscar Sudi, like I've mentioned, Samuel Arama, George Aladwa, Justus Kizito, Gideon Moi, and Busia Senator Amos Wako. And also the best performers right here, we know them, the vocal ones, David Olesankok, Millie Odhiambo, Wilberforce Oundo, and Ledama Olekina, who's actually amongst the best, I think top 5, and Moses Wetangula, Aaron Cheriot, and there you go. In as much as it's all known that yes, we expect representation, we expect them to discuss our issues, to discuss on behalf of the people that they represent. Some of them are very vocal outside, as opposed to them being vocal in the House in addressing the issues that are of importance to the common mwananchi. We know Oscar Sudi. I mean, the last thing you would expect is for him to appear in this.
Linda, this is a very interesting story.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, especially if you are from this constituency where your leader has been saying not to be very vocal in Parliament. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you feel as a constituent from these places? Yeah. I think you feel ways about it. Now, if the primary reason why we elect our members of Parliament at the constituency level is to present our grievances and our ideas and minds in Parliament, and then the likes of the Honorable Sudi do not do that in Parliament, then that questions you even the first reason why he is even a member of Parliament, if he cannot speak for his people. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a story right there. And I would like to say that the other day we were seeing in terms of women leadership and the formation of the Kenyan Women Parliamentary Association, and even what they had against the outgoing women or the chair of this particular association. They say that she was not vocal enough, or she did not address so many issues that touch on female leadership, or even rather, there are so many of these women leaders who are not vocal in Parliament. One of the reasons that was cited against this, with one the women rep for Homa Bay County, Gladys Wanga, she said that. The recent days we have been talking of teenage pregnancy, even the president addressed it. But then we have not seen these women leaders talking about this with a lot of strength and a lot of emphasis. Mm-hmm. We've not seen them coming in front and fighting for this, because we'd expect that since they connect so much with these teenagers, because they're from the same gender, they're supposed to be the role models to these people. But we rarely hear them talking about issues touching the girl child at the root level. So it only says that many of these leaders that we elect many of them, not all of them, they do not take their duties seriously. One of the duties that you have as a parliamentarian is to speak on issues that touch on matters that concern the people who elected you and even the country at large. So let them emulate the likes of Millie Odhiambo. She's a very vocal leader, and I think she's a very exemplary female leader, if we can say, in terms of people who we can look up to as role models in the world, or even the world of politics here in Kenya. So the people or the MPs who have been named to be so quiet in parliament, I don't know why, they should reform moving forward. We don't want to see those kind of leaders who only speak loudly during campaigns. These are the people who give false promises that they do not fulfill in the long run, you know, and then the next time you hear them speaking, they come and give money, they dish money here and there so that they can be elected into parliament, not on merit, but because they only talk, or they're only seen when the election nears. So we need to stop this kind of politics, yes.
And speaking of the roles of the members of parliament, we know the key functions that are bestowed upon them. Of course, that legislative aspect of it, representation, oversight. The senators also tasked to oversee the activities at the level of the counties and ensure accountability. And while they might be vocal, some of them, of course, the argument on ground is, what is it that you've done in terms of development for your people? And I think you've asked that question, and I'll ask it all the same again. Some argument, of course, online, I was looking at that, and some of them arguing that, you know what, you can have the most vocal of them, but what have they done for the people at home? And one arguing that maybe there's so much that probably the likes of Oscar Sudi have done, you know, in terms of developing their areas or their constituencies. And, you know, contrary to the fact that, you know, coming to parliament or coming to the house to bicker and talk, you know, unnecessary talk that really does not push to results as of that. You know, when you see the likes of Millie Odhiambo, you know very well that she's vocal on the issues of women. But the question then is asked, why is it that we've not achieved things like, you know, as basic as the 2/3 general, which is a constitutional, you know, recommendation? So when you look at this, I mean, should we gauge their good? Okay, should we gauge their success based on how much they speak in parliament or in the houses, or how much they ensure that development is felt for the sake of the people?
When we talk about the parliament not being able to achieve the 2/3 gender rule, then we say that the parliament is unconstitutional. In fact, if it was okay, it should be disbanded, and then we have a new parliament. Because this parliament cannot be passing legislations, cannot be passing laws, and it is the same parliament that disobeys the same. But then, as much as the women leaders trying to push this, you realize that we have a lot of challenges on the same, because even when you look at the BBI, the provisions for the women position seats, we see that they want to do away with the female leadership at the county levels. Perhaps somebody will argue on this on the basis of what are the female leaders been able to achieve during this time that they've been serving since the devolution came in and gave them these positions. What bills have they passed that are related to giving women even a voice, or even, you know, the bills that are related to women and what affects them even in parliament? What have they been able to do in terms of this, as much as they are vocal? And some of them are quite not vocal, by the way. They're so silent in parliament. Some of them, we don't even know them because they do not speak up. So what I can say is, even as we argue about the whole debate of the 2/3 gender rule, it's so upon the parliament or even the government to ensure that this is adhered to, because the current formation of the parliament is unconstitutional, because there is no provision of the 2/3 gender rule. There's still the number of the male representative exceeding quite by far the number of female representatives. The other time I was seeing the former chief whip for the Jubilee Party, Aden Duale, saying that is not his fault, or is not the parliament fault. Fault that they do not have the 2/3 gender playing part in parliament. It is because this is a new thing, and we cannot blame we cannot say that they have a part to play in this, or the government has a part to play in this. It challenged the female leaders to go out and vie for these positions, and vie for them the same way men vie for them, and they get it, and they get into parliament. Because you see, many male counterparts who are in parliament, then they're there on the basis of elections from the constituency. So it's high time that the female leaders also, if you were to realize the two-third gender rule, like what Aden Duale said in the past, you have to go out there and battle for this position. Do not expect to be elected or to be nominated, so that we can be able to realize this on a ground that we have also gone out there and participated in elections and vied for these seats without fear of not getting them. Yes.
And of course, the world working in tandem with what is happening here. The European Union is making sure that Kenyans get quality services. That is in regards to the donations that we have received so far. Lots of talks in regards to these donations and how much this, of course, can be felt by the people of Kenya. And sad to note, as of yesterday, we received this news of the death of Ivory Coast Prime Minister, that is Amadou Gon Coulibaly, who died at the age of 61. It is a developing story. We'll be updating you in regards to the same, and more so also on what is happening on the world of at large, even as we of course leave you with this cartoon edition of the People Daily, not to expand some more and need the handshake plus 2022 equals State House. That is for Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And for the Hustler Nation, intimidation plus 2022 equals to State House. So intimidation in this case, probably the likelihoods of him hoping sympathy votes that would lead him to the State House, or the handshake that of course has been purported to be one thing that is going to bring unity for the people of Kenya, and whether indeed it will be the ultimate route for Baba to reach Canaan, if at all he has not reached that just yet. So thank you so much, Tabitha Ogutu, for your time. We'll leave it at that on the newspaper review and the news stories of the day. We'll be coming back after this break on matters current affairs discussion. We still delve deeper, comprehensive talk on the topics that we've touched on right here. So we take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. And welcome back to Morning Cafe. We take you to the roads first, and then we'll be coming back to, of course, the discussion of the day, just to take a look at what is happening in Nairobi on the roads. And it's clear that this time around, unlike yesterday, not so much of activities on the roads, but right now it's clear that there are very many people. We have the map right here. But before we take a look at what is on the map, let's first of all take a look at the feedback from the road users. And at Njuguna 254, someone is asking, this is at Ikunda. Bob says that, by the way, been confused on how tuk-tuks are supposed to carry 2 passengers, are allowed to carry 6 passengers, while a 14-seater matatu is carrying 8 passengers along the link road from Waiyaki Way to Red Hill Gashie. Through that, of course, another reaction right there, and I think this is something that probably would have been an observation long time ago. And Komarok Road to Outer Ring is flowing through. These are feedbacks, a couple of minutes ago. So it's more or less the same thing. This is a tweet by Jacob Abere, and here we are painting a picture of what Komarok Road traffic flow along Koch Bridge is like. Jacob Abere is the one who's giving us that picture. And Namanga Road at Kitengela, traffic is moving very well. At Steve_Kite is the one who's telling us. And here we are still on matters how the capacity of roads, the capacity of course, filling up the vehicles on the road. Indimanje, yes, Sacco. I repeat, Indimanje Sacco are carrying excess passengers, breaking social distancing guidelines by Ministry of Health Kenya. It's very important that we note that. That is a tweet by W_Melanie, who was raising this concern. And I think it's technically what is happening in most of the roads. If you use matatus, you'll attest to the fact that now things are back to normalcy, and the touts will actually pull you or push you to sitting, in more numbers, in what, of course, is different from what the capacity is expected to be. So we need to raise the alarm in regards to the same. Outer Ring, Juja Road, traffic ascending well along Air Force. That is a tweet by Jacob Abere right here. Yes, Jacob Abere tells us that Outer Ring is not so bad. And how long of a distance would you constitute a superhighway? That's a question by somebody else. But also right here, Juja Road traffic ascending very well along Air Force. Jacob Abere tells us that. Mombasa Road past Daystar University Junction, ni teke at Steve_Kite. I had no option in all matatus was walk away. Okay, that's a different reaction. Because of the guys and here we are. Travel safe. Ngong Road is fine and no traffic jam. At Mkenya, Brian 1 is the one who's telling us that. And Karua Apal says, a sunny morning from Kiambu County. We thank God for another day, and the roads are pretty much cool as we are using them. Avoid express lane, Outer Ring Road, ukikaribia Kiamaiko on your way to Allsops. Kuna accident. Deritu_Alex updates us on this one. And Mombasa Road is very clean and smooth. Kenyan Elder is the one who's telling us that. And Thika Road towards Nairobi is as busy as B near Muthaiga. Kenyan Elder is the one who's telling us that. And I take this opportunity and repudiate my recent sentiments in regards to the construction of workmanship of the footbridge at Drive-In Thika Road. Imetokea poa sana. All right, that's an interesting one. At Willy Wahungu, if you've not used this road, then finally you get the chance to, experience this. But though it had taken a while and most of the people had complained about that for the longest of time. So yes, I guess it's going to be a surprise for most of the road users that use Thika Road. Outer Ring Road service lane, hapo karibu Equity Bank Boss, a terrible trailer, 24 wheels imekwama hapo since yesterday from 7 p.m. Car Radar, that is a Peter WE 972555661 is the one who's telling us that. Outer Ring flowing through from Jacob Abere, again just giving us the update on the same. So make sure that you keep us updated on what is happening across where you are, or review your road users wherever it is that you are, to make sure that you update us on what is happening right there. So that's more like it on what is on the roads. Let's cross over to, yes, the map itself, which also paints a picture of what the roads are like. As you can see, there's some line right here. The maroon line signifies that there's a bit of traffic, and Muthaiga Road all the way going to touch on the likes of Juja Road. I think it's just somewhere around there where you cross to different parts. Yes, we have where of course it meets with the Thika Road. There's some bit of traffic right there, but on the rest of the roads we can see a clear flow coming to Muranga Road, not so bad. Ngara is also not so bad. Ring Road, Ngara, Juja Road, all the way to Moi Air Base. This side of Isili, General Wairungi is pretty much not so bad. And the Kenya National Archives, not so bad also right here. Utula is not bad. A situation coming to Nairobi Central, Moi Avenue is also not so bad. University of Nairobi, the road that is a Museum Hill, not so bad. State House Road right here is equally not so bad. Mamlaka Hill Chapel, that is in around Nairobi and St. Andrews PCA parking. Of course, Nyerere Road is not so bad. And we take a look at this other side. Kirinyaga Road equally is a bit of a flow on matters traffic right there. And of course, River Road also down here, not so bad. And we pick here, what's this red one? That of course shows that there's some bit of traffic that is starting to pile up. So you ensure that you keep check when you're using that road that is somewhere within the CBD. And Tomboya Street also not so bad. River Road right here, that like I've said, is not as bad. We cross over to different parts just to get to see whether there's anything that would be an alarm. Kenyatta Avenue right there, some bit of snarl up, not so bad though. Kenyatta Avenue all the way. It's a clear indication that yes, within the CBD, maybe now that the vehicles have gotten inside, some bit of a slowdown of activities in terms of the roads or the vehicles that are using that. City Hall Way also. Now it's a bit clear right now. Not so bad in terms of the road. So we are here to ensure that we update you. And here we are, Standard Chartered City Hall Highway, some bit also of traffic trying to pile up. So I think evidently, if it's about the traffic, as you would experience some snarl up if you are within the CBD, but it's not so bad on the other sides, the likes of Ngong Road, the likes of Thika Road, the likes of Mombasa Road, Wayaki Way, Mbagathi Way. The main roads are not badly off in terms of traffic. Yes, still things not back to normality 101%. But you can always trust us to be here to update you on what is happening on the roads now that things are set to or are bound to go back to, of course, where they were initially upon that declaration by President Uhuru Kenyatta that is going to ease some restrictions that were put on board so that we are able to deal with COVID-19. So we take a short break, and of course I'll be crossing over to the other side of the set to join my guests. Remember, we'll be having Mr. Pius Nunda, who's the Director of Finance and Strategy, Howard Associates Limited. And we also have George Kamano, who's an entrepreneur and a philanthropist, to expound more on the issues that are taking center or the topics that we'll be discussing. We'll be delving much on the school fees refund order by, of course, the Ministry of Education. And I will still delve much more on the issues that are coming on board in regards to the pandemic. We also take a look at MENA's bid for the top WTO job. Indeed, the World Trade Force Organization is set to get the person who's going to be at the top of the helm. So we'll be delving deep and trying to look at her chances in regards to this and much more after this short break. Welcome back to Morning Cafe. Time for that current affairs discussion. We pick key topics that are making headlines and are of importance to you, and we give you that comprehensive outlook of the same. Like I had said earlier on, I have two guests who are going to join me for this particular session. George Kamanu joins me via Skype. He's an entrepreneur and a philanthropist. And right here on set, we have Mr. Pius Nunda, who is the Director of Finance and Strategy, Howard Associates Limited. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. George, you can hear us?
Very clear.
All right, good to have you this morning. And I think it is pretty much hard to have any other conversation. I noticed that you people are so much into the finance world, but all the same, we are conversant with the issues that are ongoing right here in the country. And I think it is only fair that we get comprehensive looks and we weigh in our sentiments over the same. And like I had said earlier on, we'll be touching on the school fees order that has been put on board by the Ministry of Education, just to get to know how realistic this is. And I'll start by looping you in, Pius. And here we are. We have this directive amid a lot of confusion on the education sector on whether we should open schools or not, on whether, of course, we should, take this slowly, or maybe we should just go once and for all, on whether some of the schools should reopen in September or be pushed to 2021. And then officially we have that declaration by the president, by the CS, Ministry of Health, who says, when we're talking about the TVET, these are the institutions, the key main institutions, the big institutions in the country can proceed to reopen in September. But of course, for high school students and the primary school students, they might have to wait until January 2021. So our main focus on the order for the schools to refund the school fees. What do you make of it? How realistic is that?
Well, thank you very much, Linda, for having me here. Foremostly, I would say that the declaration by the CS Education that schools be reopened in 2021, of course, throws the spanner to the works, because you see here we have children who have been waiting to resume school in September, having been sent home in March when at the height of the pandemic. Now, we have a scenario where it's a dilemma. That's what I would say, because you have parents who already affected directly by the pandemic in terms of job loss and and everything, and also the reality that they have to have the children in an extension being at home. So the big question is that when the schools have been ordered to reopen in 2021, but there are a lot of things, there are a lot of gaps that are still unanswered. Now, for instance, when they resume in 2021, are the parents expected to pay school fees for term one? Because you remember, in term one, they already paid. Actually, the schools were closed on 15th of March, when some schools were to start exams on 18th of March, actually 2 days away. So the big question is, why do you want us to pay the entire fee for the whole year? Remember, the school fees for term one always takes almost 70% or maybe 60%.
It's the most expensive.
The most expensive.
Yes.
So the question is, we already paid for infrastructure, we have paid for the book funds, we have paid for many other things. So it's really a dilemma, and I believe that it's an issue that has been raised, and I hope the CS can come out very strongly and also clarify on what parents are going to do, also to cushion the schools as well.
All right. The main reason why parents probably paid for the second and the third term, is because there was that incorporation of virtual learning, George. And now, looking at this scenario, do you suppose then we got it wrong from the word go? Would we have probably just said, no virtual learning, or if there's any virtual learning that is to be conducted, then that should be, of course, facilitated by the government in totality, as opposed to schools, because then officially, when you tell them to refund these fees, yet some of them have been conducting these virtual, processes. What does it speak? What does it mean?
Okay, first of all, the directives from the CS is a bit vague, because you can't expect the businesses to give them a full refund, because at the end of the day, there's so many things that happen in the back end of the schools, you see, because I'm sure they still had to maintain staff, they still had to pay the teachers, so you can't ask them to refund the fees You know, maybe they would have come if he put out clear directives and said probably, okay, now this is what's supposed to be happening. Maybe refund 10%, because we can see everyone has been. It's this. What has happened this time is what we call a great equalizer.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen people from prestigious schools complaining about the fees, and Kenyans thought that this specific people, this 10%, 20% could actually pay, you know, without even feeling a pinch.
Mm-hmm.
But if they felt it, that means everyone is feeling it, you know. So two wrongs don't make a right, you see. We can't start hurting the schools, which are also businesses, you know, just to burden also the parents, you know. So I think the best thing is for the CS to come out with better directives, you know, to sit down and they can actually think it through. Because right now I think it's very rush. Whatever he's doing, because he needs to mitigate a lot of things, and there's a lot of emotions running high, and he probably thinks that's the best thing to do, but I don't think that's the best thing for the economy, for the schools, and, you know, just for the whole system.
All right, and upon this order, as late as yesterday or as early as yesterday, some parents were actually still paying school fees. That's the irony of the matter. And then you just wonder, at what point then do we get an equalizer, like George says? Because if a directive is given as early as 10 a.m. in the morning by the Ministry of Health, but as of afternoon, there's still teachers who are demanding for more. I mean, courtesy of the virtual learning that is ongoing. I mean, what kind of confusion is this, and where does it place us as a people? And I mean, what does it mean, sincerely speaking, in terms of where the students are going to pick it up from when they get back to school? Because there's no way again you will tell me that teachers will have to go back after taking the students through these sessions all this while.
Okay, Linda, thank you very much. I believe the declaration that was made yesterday definitely brought a lot of confusion. Yeah. Because this is July, and we were just 2 months away from the supposed earlier on reopening that was to come up in September. Now, I really appreciate the fact that the schools that really picked up immediately after the closure in March and started the online learning. Now, what was not very clear, and even the CS said it, is whether the learners, or rather the schools who were taking the learners through second term work, or they were just maybe doing revision for term work, or just managing the learners. Yeah. Having said that, I know there are schools who have come up with the Zoom and Zoom classes that have been running. Yeah. And one of the things that brings a lot of confusion at this point in time, because well, let me say this: those schools really had a structured way of payment for the Zoom classes, yeah, and away from the school fees, the normal school fees that they were paying, and you'll find some of them were very reasonable costs, and parents actually paid for it. Now, talking about the equalizer, again, you realize that these Zoom classes, or rather the online classes, were happening largely in the urban cities, Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, and all that. While in the rural areas, not much was happening. Now, if you ask me today, one of the things I would say is that what the CS should have considered, or rather what the government should have put as a matter of priority, they should have considered a national platform where every learner would be brought on board, and some form of test. People have already said the disadvantage that we have as a country is that we only have one national exam that transitions people to the next grade. Right now, Kenya probably might be the only country where learners are going to lose an entire year. We have not heard of any other country. So if we were strategic enough, the government would have said, okay, fine, we have the loss. But do you know, what has been lost cannot be compared with what we are going now to lose entirely. Because the government would have come in to say, fine, we have lost between March and July, suppose for the classes the school that were not doing the online classes. But they could have still done something between now and December, even online, because that's where everybody else is going. Yeah. So even if we talk about starting the schools next year, January, Linda, who knows whether we are going to level the infections in January. So what if we don't level the ground? What will happen? Will we push it maybe to 2022? Yeah, and the loss is really felt. It's really huge as a nation.
Well, George, while we would say that yes, the entire global fraternity is gambling on this, the question then is always directed to the government, because, you know, as a government, they need to, or they ought to have placed structures to ensure that they protect, you know, the citizens. But in this case, we are seeing a scenario where, you know, even the president, in what many would have argued, officially said that, you know, I'll let you go because you've asked for it. I mean, just be your own keeper, be your brother's keeper, take care of your own self. When you look at such a scenario, do you suppose then that, you know, lack of proper structures, lack of policy is what has landed us into this particular limbo that we speak today? And then how do we get to revive ourselves?
Well, I'd like to take you back to history. What's happening now has happened before. We've seen it through the Spanish flu and the Asian flu, but the fatal one was the Spanish flu. Because what happened is they opened up things a bit too soon. People went out celebrating, and then that's when the disease hit everyone, you know, and it was very detrimental to everything. So I do believe President Uhuru Kenyatta had the best interest in heart by shutting down not completely everything, because, you know, our economy cannot sustain such things, because we can't give people, you know, tax refund. Even giving the people the tax refunds is I'm sure it's going to get hectic moving forward. But all I can say is we just need to change the way we do things, change our policies, because at the end of the day, I think the president is right. We have to open up the economy. You know, we can't be living in fear. This is something that we need to live with for the rest of our lives. You understand? So, given that fact, I think it's the best thing to do, because we see even Scandinavian countries in Europe opening up their borders, and what they're trying to do is they're not really telling us, but they're using something called herd immunity. You know, and in Africa that can really work. So herd immunity is where you put people with younger people. If your population is mostly young, you know, they mix with the older people. So by the time the disease moves on to the older people, it's a bit, how can I say this? It's less fatal, you know, and then we fight our antibodies fight it. And I think right now that's the best way moving forward. It hasn't been proven, but we are at a standstill. And being an African country, we can't keep on borrowing. We can't be expected to ask for all this grants and everything. You know, let's call a spade a spade. Let's be realistic. We need to move forward. Things need to open up. You know, sometimes it's not the best decisions, but it's what has to be done.
And speaking of, you know, call a spade, many have argued that we are staring at more trouble in future. And the government itself actually acknowledging that, you know what, in the event that these things do not work the way we anticipate them to, I'm afraid, you know, as President Uhuru Kenyatta would say, I might have to push you back to closure. And, you know, this is something that has sent chills in the spines of many. And even as we take a look at that, we realize there is so much that is cropping up in regards to COVID-19. And one that we would consider as a shadow pandemic is the cases that we are witnessing today, the social, you know, issues that are cropping up today, of course, the numerous, you know, mental cases that we are experiencing today, the numerous cases of divorce that have been registered, the numerous cases of course, teenage pregnancies that we are getting out here reported. Let's focus on the mental health, and we've seen, you know, the Mental Association bodies coming on board to call upon the government to seek their services. I mean, has it gotten to that point whereby we do not acknowledge the importance of these people, the importance of, you know, psychologists, the importance of, you know, mental check, the importance of counseling, such that we have landed in this kind of scenario?
First and foremost, Linda, let me say that the issue of mental health has always been a crisis in the country. Yeah. What has pushed it further is the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. And you know, right now, people are facing the reality of job loss. People are facing the reality of stress, depression, and you can imagine people have resorted into issues like substance and drug abuse and alcoholism. The report was released, I think, yesterday, and it paints a picture. That is the report of mental health. By WHO, and it paints a picture where Kenya we are staring at, 1 in every 10 people has a mental issue, has a mental problem. So I think as a nation, maybe what has come out very clearly is that we have not given that as a priority, and that's why now the task force is now coming up with a recommendation that there needs to be a commission to be formed that would advise, or rather come up with policies that would guide nationally on how, as a government or as a country, we can handle or rather tackle the issue of mental health. Talking about counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, I think we have not come to the level where we appreciate their existence, or rather their help, or rather their benefit to us as a nation. You'll want to find out how many cases report, how many of those cases that lead to death and depression. These are cases that would have been prevented had they been reported, to the relevant counselors and taken through those kind of sessions, and would have really averted cases that, like now, we are seeing murder cases, we have seen parents killing children, we have seen divorce cases, as you mentioned it. I think most recently we had the case of the police officer in Kisumu who shot at their husband. No, this is not something normal. This is something that has gone to the mind, to the extreme. So I think I would also advocate for the formation of the commission, so that they come up with policies that would guide everybody, and it's a policy that should be shared with everyone.
But just how much effective would these commissions be, or the task force that would be set on board? Because we've seen a couple of them being set on the education sector, on the tourism sector, on the transport sector. We've seen this commission coming on, even on the religious sector, which again, we're having a bone of contention as it stands right now. So coming to you, George, why does it have to take that long for us to acknowledge the need to step out, or the need to step in and address some of these issues that affect us as a society? You've heard Pius saying that these issues are not new, they've been in existence. It's just that they've been under the carpet, and we've set them in there and we've failed to address them, so that we're reaching a point whereby the psychologists are now pushing for recognition.
Really, Pius, this is long overdue, and it's so sad that our government is very reactive. We have to wait for something to blow up for us to be very reactive. I believe the commissions won't help. We've seen, as you said, we've seen it before with education, we've seen it before. There's always a stall, there's always a back and forth. So I think the best way to do it, because first of all, how can you even quantify mental health in Kenya? As was put before, he's given us a few examples. Do we actually note down the statistics? Do you understand where I'm going? We don't take, we call it murder, or I don't know what they call it, but we don't put it down as a mental case. It was someone had depression, someone had schizo, and that's why this led to this. We don't actually put it. I think it's because of where we come from as an African culture, where talking about such things is taboo. We just term it as kuamwenda wazimu. It's just that. But as you see, there's so many things. There's depression. There's actually what's schizo, and there's so many other categories. But we don't do it. For us, it's just one. So it's become a taboo, and something that's synonymous to mental health is someone walking with a gunia koteng makaratasi. So that's what we think it is. And I think the best people to handle this crisis is the private sector, because they've been doing it for the longest time. They're the people who can best handle it. For the government now to put it upon themselves and say, our health workers will do this. No, sometimes we just have to give it out to the private sector, let them handle it, because they have the better statistics. They've been doing it for much longer, and also it's easier for them to be accountable. because they can use various methods. They can use a scorecard method. If you don't pull your numbers, if you don't have the correct information, you move on to someone else. So I think it can be curbed, but it'll take time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And looking at this, while we might fault ourselves, and sometimes it's good to localize our own issues, because many a times Africa has been accused of not crafting solutions for their very own problems by copy pasting what has been already implemented in some of these huge democracies. Yeah. But when you're looking at this scenario, I mean, this is officially a global issue, and that's why we term it as a shadow pandemic, because amid us dealing with the pandemic that is there's one that is underneath that is not being widely spoken about. So when you look at this scenario, I mean, this formation that you recommend, that task force and everything, I've seen them being being put on board left, right and center, but not so much has been felt. And even if they have presented recommendations, there are some of them that have been faulted. So moving forward, what is the role of the society also in ensuring that this is not going to be the case, or we're not going to be reporting rise in the number of cases on mental health?
I think, Linda, very true that most of the times we form commissions that come up with the recommendation and policies, but we again put it under the carpet. What I would say, the responsibility then goes back to the society, as you put it, and also to the parents. And it's just our prayer that as we go through this, these are, we call unprecedented times. We are going through uncharted waters. Parents are really going through a lot of stress, and let me tell you, that might we might just be headed to a very serious zone, because look at now the children, the teenagers, they're going to be home for longer hours. So I would just throw the ball back to the parents. Let parents take responsibility, because as much as we're going to come up with these policies, as much as we're going to come up with these commissions, the ball must stop somewhere. It must stop with the parents, because you don't expect children to be fine if already their parents are already fighting. If their parents are already are the first people for them to see when committed suicide, or worse, commit suicide, or even are the ones who are abusing the substance into alcoholism and all those kind of things. So I think the responsibility, it is the society, it is the family, it's the parents, and it's the community.
And of course, as the president would say, maybe it would be wise for us to take this as a collective responsibility, and we seek to see whether indeed the easing of restrictions is going to come in handy to address some of these issues, because as the report dictates, some of these people are getting into this state because of losing their jobs, some of them being sent on compulsory leave, uncertainty of what the future holds could be what has pushed them to this point. So even as, of course, we deliberate on these issues, it's important that we take that societal role and play key in regards to ensuring that this is dealt with. But moving forward, there's also been a reprieve on the transport sector, and also we cross over to the level of the airlines. And finally, we had that address by the CS for matters roads and transport, and he argues that we are going to have flights coming on board, and if these people or passengers are not considered to have signs and symptoms that would dictate they have COVID-19, they will not have to be subjected to testing. And also, we acknowledge the fact that there's been an existence of asymptomatic cases, and the fact that also they say that we'll not be having this social distancing at the level of the planes. When you look at this, I mean, it's probably a good thing in terms of boosting the economy, or in terms of regaining what we've lost so far on the aviation industry. But where does it place us in terms of also dealing with COVID-19? Are we trying to be a little bit, are we trying to just overlook what could be very important in terms of helping us deal with this fight, or winning this fight, George?
Let's just call it. Let's just say it as it is. As I said before, we are being economically crippled. And even when we come to the depression and everything, it's mostly brought about by financial stress, most of the time. So for the CS to open up our country, I think is the best thing we can ever do. You know, we need to continue with life. You know, this is something we have to continue dealing with. It's just like the Spanish flu now. It's just like a normal flu. You know, in time, as I talked before about the herd immunity, you know, we're going to learn how to live with it. And what we're going to do moving forward, if you've traveled before, there's something that we always have the yellow fever shot, the card. You know, I'm sure they'll come up with a system like that where we'll be having, you know, before you travel, you probably will go through some tests, you know, and before you travel back. I think for now, that's just the best way to deal with it, because we have no other solution. We can't just pretend to be an island and no one is supposed to come in, no one is supposed to go out. You see, Kenya is an economic hub of the Eastern and Central Africa. You see. So we right now, especially right now, we need the money. But let's not think that the 52 million that was given to us is more than enough, because it only accounts to 0.5%. And you see our trajectory of our economy was supposed to be between 4 to 5%. Yeah. You understand? So that means we are on a deficit of 150 million, give or take. Yeah. So that tells you we're in the red. You understand? Yeah. So
Catch 22 on what to be saved. Sorry to cut you. Catch 22 on what to be saved: the economy or life. And when you look at this scenario, it's a clear indication that we are on that quest of ensuring that we regain back our economy. First of all, by encouraging tourism. Second of all, by ensuring that we revamp some of these sectors that have lagged behind. But when you look at this, do you suppose then that in a polite way we'll be washing away the efforts that we've put aboard? So at least we're able to deal with COVID-19. Yes.
Well, I think George has brought in a very important point. Yeah. That we have the economy to grow. We also have the health issue to look at. In the CS address, he was very categorical, and what he was alluding to is not new. That's what even other global airlines are advocating for. You know, you cannot, like they're saying, you cannot fly an empty aircraft and expect profitability. Yeah, actually, it has been proven that any aircraft flown under 75% is flying into a loss territory.
All right.
Yeah. So if we are going to open our borders, so that we have, like, you know, the international flights are going to resume officially on 1st of August.
August, yeah.
We cannot say that we are opening and the flights are coming in, because the coming in of the flights is going to definitely boost our economy. But we want to fly like half aircraft or something. As it is, the aircrafts, the way they have been designed, whichever way, you cannot maintain social distance.
That that is what informed the crippling down of, you know, these flights from Kenya to the US.
To the US, yeah.
All right.
So like now you see the way the airlines, the seats have been designed. You even if you wanted to leave one seat vacant, you'd only be creating a 45 centimeter distance. So that one does not equate to the two meter distance that is expected to be able to fight corona. Now, what then that means is that social distance is not the only preventive measure. Yeah, there are many others. So what I would recommend is this: we are not washing down on our efforts that we already put earlier.
Yeah.
Indeed, we are in Catch 22. So what we need to do, we can strengthen other preventive measures that are in place, including pre-screening. You know, you ensure that everybody who is going on board is totally, you know, screened and is safe.
Right.
I know there are those cases of asymptomatic, but we can ensure that we do everything possible, including sanitization, washing their hands, ensuring that the baggages, the luggage and everything is screened totally, so that by the time we are allowing flights into the country, at least we are very sure. The only thing I am not very keen at, the CS said, is that anybody, those who have not shown the signs
will not be quarantined.
Let me tell you, Linda, we are opening that in itself is opening our borders.
That's where exactly the first case culminated from.
You know. Yeah, so we are in a very difficult position, and let me just take you back. Aircraft or even public transport, the president has made it very clear that responsibility now has to go back to me. You know, right now people are traveling up country. So and when it spikes, they will have to close. When the spike starts to close. So in a nutshell, what I would say that we really need to do everything possible. We need to do in an aircraft, whether outbound or inbound. Yeah, that's what I would say.
All right, well, we'll leave that one and we wait to see how this will culminate or how this will happen, even as we cross fingers that indeed will not be washing away the efforts like we have said, or washing away the importance of all this social distancing and the issues that are on board. If worst comes to the worst, then we would rather not have the activities ongoing and ensure that we save our lives. And to some other important or pertinent topic that I have picked is on the members of parliament committee membership that they are supposed to address come next week. I mean, there's been lots of confusion in the political world in the country right now, probably throwing us into more limbo as a people. I mean, we do not know what next, we do not know whom to follow, whom to trust, and still we are lagging behind on matters development.
Well, Linda, it's very difficult to talk development and economics and politics at the same time. We have seen those fights, and we have seen our politicians, or rather our leaders, fighting for slots and for positions. And what has been seen at the height of the pandemic, we saw our politicians refocus away from talking about the national disaster, and most of them were just aligning themselves to the issues to do with impeachment and all that. And I think I would say it's a very unfortunate time. I wish our politicians would have taken more time to reflect on how, as a government, we can come up with policies of rallying everybody behind to ensure that we fight the virus, we fight the effects of the virus, and we put our economy back on the road. Do you know, these things were happening right within our budget process making, and the politicians would never stop, politicking. So I think even the rush to get those slots is not anything different, Linda. It's all about a game of survival. Everybody right now, let me tell you, everybody right now are aligning themselves to 2022. And unfortunately, pushing back on key development agenda. Let me tell you, if our parliamentarians were very sincere and very intentional, they would have interrogated more the report that came from the education task force. Rather than, like right now, there are a lot of gaps. But did they even take time to interrogate that document?
Sadly,
I don't think they did. If they did, it was not shown to us. They would have gone to parliament and discussed those issues. Have they really come up and interrogated even the report that has come from the health sector? No, I don't think they've done that. So for me, I think our politicians and our leaders are all, I would call, egocentric. They're selfish, and they have their own personal interests at heart.
Let's loop in George a bit. And we know very well that they're paid to politic, and that's what they're bound to do day in, day out. We have seen some realignments on matters politics. We've seen different parties joining into the Jubilee Party. We've seen some of them having issues right now. It's clear and evident that there is a rift between ODM and, of course, Jubilee Party in terms of how they are going to balance this. It's the committee representation that we're talking about. So when you look at such scenario, where does it place the common mwananchi in terms, of course, of service delivery, and what does it speak of 2022 politics, because then that is the ultimate goal as it stands?
That's a very good question. I'll start by saying what Nelson Mandela once said, to know the devil, you must speak his language. So right now what's happening, there's sort of a marriage between Jubilee and ODM.
Right.
So, and they have one common enemy. And I think the common enemy, we all know who it is. And for that reason, that's why we saw Kimunya taking time. Kimunya was a bit hesitant, to go with ODM and to sit down with them and to negotiate who's going to take what, at the end of the day. But they do have a point, because there is no way, because Uhuru is nearing his end of his term, I think so, and he only has about 2 years left. And you can't have your inner circles fighting you, from fighting enemies from within, and you're trying to make developmental changes, because these committees are very, very crucial. As much as we don't want to agree with it, they're very, very crucial. And you need a team player. You need people who are with you, sitting down and having the same goal and agenda in mind. And it's sad to say that already I can see the first, the people who are going to be asked very soon, especially is Sholole. As we've seen it before, she's anti-BBI. You know, she's very outspoken. She said it before. I know people might argue and say probably it's because she's Tanga. You know, at the end of the day, you know, your boss is the ultimate boss. You know, and also in the rules of power, they say you strike the shepherd and scatter the sheep. You understand? So this is what's happening. It's both political and it's also both for the good of Uhuru Kenyatta's agenda. I understand. So I think what's going to happen is pro-BBI supporters are going to be put in this committees. There's going to be a lot of divide. Let's not forget, there's probably going to be a referendum happening sooner than we think. You know, so there's a bigger it's bigger than we think it is. Yes.
All right. So as we close down on this, Pius, you saw the list that came on board yesterday from Mzalendo on some of the members of parliament who are very active, you know, in the houses or in the two houses, the august houses, and some of them who are not as vocal. And honestly, topping the list is Oscar Sudi, whom we know very well to be very vocal. But again, it looks like no contribution much towards addressing the issues of Mwananchi at the level of the houses.
Yeah, I think just like Georgia said, and I've also alluded, our leaders and our politicians always just have their interest at heart. And of course, even prioritization of those who get those chunk of slots depend on which side you support. I know right now the side of ODM, there are those ODM MPs that were already aligning themselves to the deputy president side, Tanga, and of course people already questioning that if you're not supporting handshake or even the BBI, then how do you expect to benefit, or rather how do you expect to debate positively or in a way that you contribute to the national welfare? So I think for me that list, it just mirrors what we are as a society. Let me tell you, even when you interrogate further, you'll find that some of those people look at even the grounds on which they were elected into office. You'll find that there's none altogether. So for me, I would say we are just in the same era of, you know, rewarding somebody because of how well they support a certain party, who is of course running the day.
All right. Okay. As we drop that one and we await what will happen on Tuesday, we cross over to this one that will be locking up the session for us. And Kenya officially endorses CS Amina Mohammed for the World, the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization seat on Director General seat. Not the very first time that we are having her being endorsed for such as important and, you know, seat. We saw her being endorsed for the slot of chairperson in the African Union. You know, we almost got that one by the fact that we've had differences as the African continent, and they opted for a different candidate. I have no capacity to weigh in on that, but yes, we saw what played out back then. What does it mean, or what does it speak, or what are the prospects for Amina taking this home or bringing this home?
Well, for Amina, I would give her, she's most likely, remember, it is not the first time she's going for the same position. She did vie for the same position, and indeed she was fronted in 2013. And she lost just by one vote, just because of Ghana.
Yes.
We did not have that diplomatic agreement with Ghana. And, what will come to play is not anything different that we saw even when Kenya was seeking for the UN seat of
Security Council.
Security Council. And Linda, that some of the countries that did not vote for us. Yeah, our neighbors.
Our neighbor Somalia.
Yeah. Actually, Tanzania, they never voted for us.
Right.
And I think the disunity or the disagreement between us and us African countries really played a major role. But for Amina, because of her diplomatic work, because of her experience, she has been in the UN.
Right.
She has led task forces, even in the same WTO. That is a plus for her. And I'm sure this time around, she's most likely to bring it home. I am also aware that some of the contenders, some of them are also African.
Yes.
African leaders. We have seen the finance minister. Is it of Ethiopia or
there's one from Nigeria?
Nigeria, yes.
Uh-huh.
So, but looking at her diplomatic records and even the high profile positions she has had in the UN, the UNEP, she was at one time Deputy Secretary General of the UNEP. Yeah. So I think with that experience and that exposure, really gives Amina an upper hand, to take the seat.
George, an upper hand for CS Amina Mohammed?
Yes, I think as it is right now, because of how Kenya is positioned in world politics, I think she has the upper hand to actually sail through, because she's also running against three very able women, and I think this time around it probably will come to her, best to her. We should support her.
Right.
It will mean something for us.
All right, and of course, as we speak about that, just back to you, George. What does it speak about? That aspect of African integration, because we've seen on numerous occasions, and this is not just the case. I remember there's a time we were following up on what, of course, would happen on the United Nations tourism sector, that is UNWTO, and we had a contender from Zimbabwe, and we also had a contender from Seychelles, and endorsed by the African Union, endorsed by 3/4 of the African countries. The Zimbabwean candidate was likely to crunch or to get that, but the Seychelles candidate would not step down for him, would not accept to step aside and allow him to get, an outright win. It clearly speaks of how hard it has been for Africans to integrate and just proceed and forward the issues of the African, or the agendas of the Africans, forward, and ensuring that we are placed somewhere at the top of seats. We saw what happened the other day with Kenya and Djibouti, and as much as we carried the day. What does it speak about the integration? What does it speak about how much Africans are willing to come together to address the issues and push the agenda of the Africans ahead?
For me, it's just it sounds like neocolonialism all over again. Because if you really like use a magnifying glass and you can see through everything that's happening, there's always a hand. There's just a hand that does all this. And as Africans, we have not realized what previous Nelson Mandela, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, what he was trying to tell us about nationalism. We need to come together as Africans. We need, to support each other, because we have the same interests. You see, Africa is a food basket of the world. Actually, we were seeing there was some WHO had put out some statistics out there, and in the coming years, we will be the people who have the biggest say. So we should learn how to start working together. We saw this with Gaddafi. Gaddafi was really trying to unite the Africans, and at the end of the day, he was labeled a traitor. He was labeled someone who had crimes against humanity. But that wasn't the case. You see, as soon as they don't learn how to spin a narrative, you become the enemy. So I think we need to just throw our weight behind each other and just move forward. Because if we keep doing what we're doing, because let history speak for itself. It hasn't got us anywhere. Being very individualistic.
Okay, and that has been considered as Africa's biggest undoing towards fronting the agenda of the Africans. But even worse, there's an enemy within. And if you remember very well, at that time when there was that push and lobbying that was done towards seeing to it that Amina Mohammed again clinches the seat of the African Union chairperson, the African Union Commission chairperson, you notice that within ourselves in the country, There were people who considered Amina as a candidate of Jubilee as opposed to being a Kenyan candidate. And just within us, the country, there were talks of how, of course, she would proceed to fail that. And, there were efforts to ensure that she does not clinch this seat. So have we dealt with the enemy within so that we can go moving forward knowing that we're going to speak as a nation and lobby enough and speak to the rest of the world and speak to the rest of the Africans so that they would front our candidate and get her to win this?
Yeah, so Linda, what I would say is that politics divide us as a nation.
Yeah.
And that is what causes the enmity within. And even before I say that, just to the the previous question that you just asked, Georgia, about the integration
of
Africa. Look at when we talk about Africa, we talk about the AU and everything, and we talk about the 52 plus countries.
Yes.
Do you know that as it is now, even as the East African community, we are so divided. I look at the kind of tiffs that we had at the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
That Kenyan drivers, the truck drivers could not be allowed into Uganda even after testing, and they would be put there for weeks.
Yeah.
Look at Tanzania, the same. Yeah. So we already have that problem even regionally, local region, right. if you allow me to use that word. Now coming home, we have these over 40 plus tribes. And of course, we have about 10 who are already vocal. So it starts me to realize that even as a nation, when we have international issues that would rather unite us together, we're already seeing each other as Jubilee and as ODM. Right. We're already seeing each other as Luo and Kikuyu and Kamba and Meru and Embu and Luya and all that.
Yeah.
And we such are the things that have really divided us. Such are the things that have really taken us aback. Even in terms of development, because you look at somebody who's already, let me tell you, the things that unite us the things that, let me say this, the things that can unite us together as a country outweighs the things that already divide us. Yeah, look at when the country was pushing the agenda of Kenya being in the UN Security Council seat. I looked at how vocal the president was. And the gains that we were already bringing, how we were pushing the agenda, how we were saying how united we are. I looked at some of the gains. Look at how the individual persons, irrespective of whether they're Luya or from where, or Nandi from where, who have pushed Kenya to the globe. Look at the issue of Kipchoge. Look at the issue of the teacher from Nakuru, Tabichi.
Right.
Look at the athletes. Look at our doctors, look at our engineers, look at everybody who are, already flying the Kenyan flag so high. So the things that you need to unite us as a nation outweighs the things that divide us. Yeah. So as a country, I'm really startled at some of the things that we always bring on board. Whenever like that case of Amina in when she was seeking that position in AU. It really disappointed.
Was.
So yeah, it was really was. So let's focus as a nation, even as we go through this pandemic. Let us focus on the things that can unite us than the things that can divide us.
I agree. And coming to you in 30 seconds or so, George, you are an entrepreneur. I also have Pius here, who's more into the finance world, more into the economics world and strategies and all that. What would it mean if we clinch this seat? Now we're talking about the World Trade Organization. What would it mean for us?
Start with
George, yes.
Okay, what it will mean for us is we are going to have access to so many other things because, as I said before, East Africa is like an economic hub. We have the upcoming Silicon Savannah. We have so many things for the future, and we are projected to be a very big economy in the next 3 to 4, 5 years time, and it will only be a very, very good thing for us if we have someone who are supporting us and someone who can also navigate and show us the way, because at the end of the day, it's better having someone from the inside, guiding us and telling us this policies won't work, for us to get money from this and for us to get such partnerships. We need to work with this and that. We need someone who actually sits on the table, who can actually tell us what to do and how not to do it. You understand? Because most of the time in the previous years, we've seen how Africa, there's a book called Africa Kills Her Son. You know, how we are our own worst enemy. You know, I remember a story about there's someone called a Lazarus sheep. What a Lazarus sheep does is now leads the other sheep to the slaughterhouse, you know, but this sheep knows, the other sheep they don't know. And once it leads them to the slaughterhouse, it turns around and goes the other way, you know, and we're just hoping that this will never happen, you know, in the African country. You know, let's promote nationalism and let's support our own.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Linda. What I would say, Amina clinching this seat would mean so much to us. One, this would really open for us opportunities internationally to be able to do more business. Remember, the key role of World Trade Organization is to come up with policies, international policies, just to be able to bring countries together to be able to do business. Right. I see Amina as being our key ambassador as she goes out there in Geneva, and I'm already talking because I believe that she's already claimed the seat. I know in terms of international relationship, in terms of a working smooth relationship with funders like World Bank. Remember, in 2019, the World Bank report indicated that Kenya, in terms of ease of doing business, is internationally it's one of the countries that has really gone so high, in terms of doing business. So I believe that by Amina clinching this seat, pushing for us the development agenda there. Remember, we already have the Mukisa Kitui, who's already in that global position, and I believe the two together can push an agenda. And remember, Kenya, we hosted the ITCAD, and I'm sure this will open up more opportunities for us as a country, for us to host more of such, and that definitely pushes our economy up. And remember, we're still struggling with issues like borrowing and all that, and I believe by her going, she might only benchmark and bring home some of the best practices that can take us to the next development as a nation.
And we have like some bonus minutes, and I'd want to ask this, throwing it to you. You brought this pertinent point by saying that this was not the first time that she goes for this. And there's one mistake that we probably did, or there's something that was just amiss that we did back then that probably did not allow us to clinch this seat. What lessons did we pick? And what are we going to do different this time around? Should we try and woo Ghana some more so we don't lose this, or what are we going to do?
I think the president, I really like the way President Uhuru Kenyatta really pushed the agenda when Kenya was going for the UN Security Council, and of course all of us, we were there waiting. And I think it also took more than just that. It took a lot of negotiation and also a lot of deliberation and discussions around going in there. And so I believe right now as a nation we learned our lessons. We probably would want to find out the countries that are already also fronting, because as they front, it's also a threat, Linda, because people will obviously see that how comes we have all these people, you know, and whether we like it or not, Djibouti gave us a run for our money. They gave us a run for our money.
They did.
So I do believe that if as a nation, as a country, we can come up with maybe a raft of measures to be able to reach out to some of the countries that are already, and if some of them are going for the first time, why not just request them to leave it for us? Because look at Amina went for it in 2013 and she didn't get it. Here she's going again. I mean, there's always another chance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of which, now I think when you ask for it, you get it. She's going to race against 6 contenders to outseat, that is Roberto Azevedo, who took that one last time, of course, stepping away or stepping out a year earlier. He was a Brazilian back then, and of course, I mean, he was a Brazilian, and I mean, we saw what kind of fight we put up, and we by a whisker we missed out on that one. So the next contenders, or the current contenders, are 6, and they are from Egypt, Kenya, Mexico, Moldova, Nigeria, and South Korea. So we have like 3 of us coming on board, and not just 3 of us, but very powerful of us. Egypt is no joke, Nigeria is no joke, Kenya is not a joke also. So coming to you, George, I mean, what should we do different to outshine Nigeria, to outshine Egypt, to, you know, convince the rest of the African countries that indeed we stand a chance to make the best of this for the sake of Africa and the sake of the global fraternity?
Anything to outshine anyone, especially we should just, you know, we've seen it even in our local politics. Outshining the other person doesn't take us anywhere. I think what we need to do is just sit down with them and negotiate and tell them that just show them what we can bring on the table, and in exchange probably open up our borders for trade, you know, give like trade incentives to the countries that have supported us, or just anything. I think it's the best time to politic, you know, and not to outshine, not to compete. So I think for us is to sit down and ask them to let us just take the next step, let us steer the whole Africa forward, you know, because I think Amina is very able and competent. Seeing this even in her previous dockets. But for the fact that she ran for it in 2013, you know, and it didn't work out. I think this is now the best time, and we should also tell them that even we should support other African countries in the next whatever comes later. Let also support our African countries.
Yeah. All right, and now the task that the next chief will face is quite huge. Some of the key things that have been highlighted in terms of ensuring that they get to revive all stalled trade talks that have been ongoing across the global fraternity, and of course addressing the 2021 ministerial conference, which is key also in this particular body, is one of the major events that the World Trade Organization, you know, holds, and the thorough relationship that is there between, of course, this trade organization and Washington. Trump, as always, has been that person who threatens to exit the stage from all these organizations that he terms not necessary or not of benefit to the United States. And they had actually threatened to exit or to leave the World Trade Organization. I mean, how tough is it going to be for our own CS? How tough is it? Because now we're talking on, you know, terms of where we assume that we have taken this home.
I know Amina has always been equal to the task, and putting her in that position would really expose, or rather utilize her diplomatic experience. And I think with the support, you know, right now where the world is headed, remember, even as a nation, we're already talking about DST. Yeah, I don't know whether you guys have already discussed that DST, Digital Service Tax. And what that means is that the world is now becoming a very small. It's a global. It's one thing. Yeah. So even with the rejection, even with the difficulties of Trump and many other leaders, I think there are many others out there who are willing and ready to support. And I know that on a table, I'm not really certain, but I know there are also those the trade wars that have also been there between countries, China, US, and all those kind of things. And I think she brings in an expertise and a unilateral one for that matter, because she comes from neither of those regions. As for us as a nation, you know, somebody might look at Kenya as a very small country, but I think we speak volumes when it goes out there in terms of diplomacy. So I think Amina is equal to the task rather, and so then we really just want to wish her well, and also wish other leaders to give her the support, because it's not about Kenya, it's not about Africa, but it's about the benefit that it comes with for the whole world.
And indeed, as we would say, her win is a win for Kenya, is a win for Africa, and indeed a win for women, a win for the global community at large. So we can only wish her nothing but the best. But as we always say, may the best man win. Thank you so much, Mr. Pius Nunda, Director of Finance and Strategy, Howard and Associates Limited. It was great having you. And equally, George Kamano, who's joining us on Skype. He's an entrepreneur and philanthropist. It was great having you, gentlemen, this morning. And of course, we say thank you also to you back at home for keeping us company right from the time we started. But we're not going just yet, because we have an interesting session that we had recorded on Group B strep, that is GBS, a condition. And of course, this is that month that we get to create awareness revolving around this. So after this break, you get to learn some more from Dr. Chege in regards to this particular condition. You get to know how you can protect yourself, protect your loved ones, and moving forward, we are going to call it a day at that particular note after this break. and welcome back to Morning Cafe's lifestyle segment. Today, we're all about health. We're taking a look at, how best you can ensure that you take care of yourself. I mean, a majority of us would tell you that, unless you are diagnosed with something, you barely have no idea what this disease or what this condition is all about. So we take it upon ourselves to ensure that we enlighten you on some of the conditions that you could be having, somebody else could be having, but actually you may need to know about. So we'll be talking about Group B strep, and of course expounding it further to neonatal sepsis, and we seek to understand what exactly it is about. And mark you, it is the month where of course we create awareness of Group B strep. So we'll delve deep into that, and I am not a specialist, and we have a specialist on board. We have Dr. Kristen Chege from the Kenya Pediatric Association. She's going to take us through this session and we get to understand some more about this. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Linda.
Good to have you.
Good to have you too. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak about neonatal sepsis or neonatal infections with a focus on Group B strep. We are aware that this is the month that we have dedicated to this growing and little known infection that affects the little babies. So I'll just give us a background, because I recognize we are not all technical experts, and then we shall zero in on the topic of today. So when we say neonatal sepsis, those are two technical words. Neonatal simply means babies below the age of 1 month. Those are neonates. Sepsis is a condition that is a bacterial infection, like a serious bacterial infection that can be detected in blood. So that is sepsis. So when we say neonatal sepsis, we mean sepsis in the neonate. And neonatal sepsis can be caused by many organisms, many bacteria, and Group B streptococcus is one of the leading causes of neonatal sepsis. Why Group B? Because we also have Group A, we also have Group C, we also have Group D all the way. So they are grouped that way based on the surface coating of the bacteria. But Group B streptococcus is the one that is responsible for a majority of neonatal infections, and it is preventable. Now, let us have the scope. How much neonatal sepsis are we having in our country? Is it just a small thing that we should not be worrying about? Newborn infections or neonatal sepsis are the leading causes of infant mortality in low and middle income countries, of which our country is one. So this is something that is very serious.
Right.
Yes.
So how notable is this? I mean, how do I get to know that, yes, at this point my baby has neonatal sepsis?
So let me first say how this infection, Group B streptococcus, is transmitted. So it is a bacterial infection, and Group B strep can be found in the birth canal of mothers. So we have about half of our mothers being infected. Let me not say infection, because we have something called colonization. So colonization is exactly as the name suggests, to be colonized, meaning that this bacteria live on your skin, maybe live on your birth canal, but they do not infect you.
But how do you know that you carry this?
So when they live on your birth canal, they're just there quietly. So what happens once in a while when a mother is pregnant, they will now infect, and they can infect even the fluids that surround the baby, what we call the amniotic fluid. So when that happens, the mother will get a fever, and she'll definitely go to hospital, and maybe the infant will have to be delivered early, or she'll get antibiotics to control that. So Group B streptococcus can do that. It can also cause babies to be born before term, what we call premature. Mothers go into premature labor and they deliver, and perhaps the infant can get the infection. But a majority of mothers just carry the infection silently, and that is why if we know that somebody is at risk of having that group B strep, then the mothers are given antibiotics when they are in labor.
So that will help protect the baby.
That will help 100%.
Okay.
But it will help protect the baby.
All right. Okay, so moving on, now you brought about the aspect of neonatal sepsis. So then what is the key connection, and now how does it translate to this point?
So to this point now, because we have talked about the background of how GBS comes about, because we have said it is an infection that is carried, the bacteria are carried by the mother, sometimes silently. So what happens if a baby is delivered vaginally, as most babies are? Now they may get, either they get colonized. Remember we said there's a difference between colonization and infection. They may get colonized by that bacteria, and they may actually just, it may not cause them any harm, but a few of them, maybe 1% of the ones who get colonized, may now get infection. So how does this infection manifest? So what happens is that in infants, or rather let's say the neonates and the newborns, because their immune system is not mature, they will not manifest infections in the same way as you and I would. Because you and I, definitely you will get a fever, you might cough, and basically it is very easy to tell when a person has an infection, a grown-up or an older child. But for a newborn, there are key features that we must always look at. And the good thing is that they are very easy to pick, even for a mother who is a first-time mother. Because remember, in pregnancy, you actually develop a bond with your child. You know, you can tell when the child is moving in the tummy, this child is well, this child is not unwell, this child, there's something wrong, today they're not moving. So even when the child is born, that connection continues. So you will find that a mother will come and tell you, maybe there's something off with my child. That is a very key sign. And what do they mean by off? They mean that the child looks unwell. The child looks lethargic. That does not mean sleeping. It just means the child especially cannot latch on the breast. That is a very key sign of something seriously wrong with the baby. Even before the fever comes in, they will tell you this child is lethargic, does not want to even latch on the breast. So that is a very, very key sign of neonatal sepsis. And it's not specific for group B strep, because group B strep is just one of the bacteria that cause neonatal sepsis. So the other thing that may happen, a few infants can get fever. So fever in a newborn or a neonate is something we do not take lightly. We always say fever is serious bacterial infection in an infant until proven otherwise. So that means when you find fever in your baby, must be checked by a health professional. Don't say it is a cold, especially if you find a fever in your newborn, you uncover them, then you recheck, you find the temperature is still 38. So it's important, if possible, have a thermometer in the house so that you are able to gauge your baby's temperature. Not that you keep measuring, you will tell the temperature is off. How do you tell that? When your baby is breastfeeding and their mouth is on your breast, there's a certain temperature that you feel. But if they have a fever, it feels hot. So that is usually your gauge, even if you don't have a thermometer, that they have a fever. Now, when you combine with the other signs, especially inability to feed, then you know something is seriously wrong. The other signs are neither here nor there, but they can happen because a few babies can get pneumonia from GBS. It is not common. The most common thing is just a generalized infection. So with pneumonia, babies with pneumonia don't cough. In case you people didn't know, they don't cough. They just have breathing difficulties. Where you see the child is struggling to breathe. They may even be making some abnormal sounds that we call grunting, where the baby is struggling to breathe. You can feel they are straining. So they make sounds like, And if it's very serious, they may change color. Babies are supposed, even our dark African babies, they usually have a nice and pink tone on their mucous membranes, on their lips. They usually have a nice pink color. So when you see your baby looks grayish, pale, that's a sign, or even bluish, darkish, there's a problem. there's a problem right there. So you see, these are signs that can be picked by any mother,
Right.
not necessarily an experienced mother. Any mother who feels their child is off, that is a key sign of GBS.
Then one would want to ask, how then do we prevent GBS from the word go?
So from the word go, and I'm sure now we will not be having a lot of GBS, hygiene. Hygiene, hand washing when handling the infant. The baby has already been born. So hand washing, so that if you yourself are colonized by GBS and you didn't know, you will hand wash and you protect yourself, especially when you moving, maybe you are coming to handle, whenever you're coming to handle the baby, always try and hand wash, sanitize. The other thing is, of course, biggest thing, try and deliver in a hospital. I don't know who the audience of this TV station is, but I know in the COVID-19 era, mothers have been keeping away from hospitals. They have been choosing to deliver from home. And then there is also another subgroup of mothers who copy things from the West and choose to deliver at home, what we call home births. It's a very up-market thing to do. That is also a risk factor.
Does it then mean that in the event that there are risks of someone or a baby or an infant getting GBS or even neonatal sepsis, this can be known at the point of inception, at the point of delivery?
Yes, and unfortunately in our country, we are not able to routinely do GBS screening for mothers coming to deliver. We are not able to do that. But out in the West, every mother is screened for GBS, and if you are colonized with GBS or infected, you are given antibiotics, very simple antibiotics, penicillins, and those ones will take care of that. But they are not 100% protective to the baby. But here what we do, we screen the mothers. We have the high-risk mothers. Who are these high-risk mothers? One, if you had a previous infant who got infected with GBS, you are considered a high-risk mother and a candidate for being given antibiotics in labor. It's only given during labor. If you come in and you know how the waters break and you didn't go into labor immediately, so you have that prolonged draining of water, it means you are at risk for infection, having infection, so you'll get your antibiotics. If you come in and you have a fever, a mother with a fever, you are considered a high-risk mother. So that's why it's very important to go for antenatal checks and deliver in hospital.
All right. So what could be the long-term effect of an infant getting this bacteria or being affected by this bacteria?
Yeah, so first, let's talk about the treatment of GBS. It's always good to give people hope. GBS is one of those bacteria that are very responsive to simple antibiotics that are available even in our government hospitals, the penicillin and the gentamicin. Very responsive. They are available even in the smallest sub-county hospital. So you don't need to feel that, this is just for high-level people. Once the infant gets treatment, which should be for 10 to 14 days, you must stay in hospital for that long. Even when the fever settles, you must completely eradicate the GBS, especially because a small portion of the neonates infected with GBS will have meningitis. And meningitis is an infection of the central nervous system. It needs a longer time to completely be eradicated. So those are very simple treatment, and if in fact, let's say 90% of the infants will recover. They will recover fully from the infection, and they will never have any lifelong. A small majority, and especially those who get meningitis, those ones might develop now the long-term effects of meningitis, which would be to do with the things like learning disabilities, some kind of hearing deficits. But like I said, if you seek treatment early with those few symptoms that I've told you, that can be prevented because the treatment is very, very effective. And now to add on to that, there is research going on towards developing a vaccine against GBS. It's still quite some years away, but at least to give hope. Because like you've seen, it's very difficult to predict which mother has GBS and then some infants will develop the infection in hospital before the mother is discharged, and so they are kept a bit longer. Unfortunately, some of them develop what is called late onset neonatal sepsis, and that one is now where we really need to inform the mothers when they are going home. Please, these are the signs to look out for in your babies. The baby appears well, but the infection comes later. But it is also easy to treat as long as you go to hospital on time.
Right, it is the awareness month for GBS. What would be your message or also the parting shots as we get to wind up on this important session?
So my awareness about GBS and generally about care of the newborn, one is that we should not fear our newborns. Many of us, especially the fathers, they really fear the newborns. But newborns are resilient. Think about how they have survived for 9 months under those conditions in the womb. They are very, very resilient. They just need to be handled well. And how do we handle them well? They don't really need very high-tech things. They need skin-to-skin contact with the moms. So I know there are very many people who talk about sleep training and don't pick up the baby when they cry, but I will tell you that all that is rubbish when it comes to newborns. Newborns need to develop trust. They need to know that every cry will be attended to, because every cry of a newborn means something. And I can tell you, and even mothers will tell you, that a baby will cry and you know that's a cry of pain. It's not that you went to school and learned about that. It is just because you have learned your infant. You will know that's a cry of hunger, that's a cry of pain, that's a cry of I need to be picked up and cuddled. Cuddling is very, very important, even to get the baby to develop immunity. And how does that happen? The mother's skin bacteria are very important for the baby to develop their own immune system. So mothers and fathers need to handle their babies very much. Breastfeeding is a way of skin-to-skin contact, so breastfeeding also gives them a bit of that bonding and a bit of that immunity, plus the breast milk itself protects the babies very much because they get some of the antibodies that the mother already has, and it protects them against the early infections, because remember, we've not vaccinated these babies. So they need breast milk, they need skin-to-skin contact, they need warmth. Every one of us can get warmth, but a balance, because again, we want these babies to also, we are trying to protect them, but we are also trying to make them build their own defense system. So don't overdress your baby. And how do you know you are overdressing? How are you dressed? If you're dressed the way I am, then maybe just put an extra layer, one for the baby.
Even during these cold moments when you're told you have to.
Exactly. So like Linda, the way you're wearing that coat, it means you're feeling cold. So it means now you have to have an extra layer for your baby.
Baby, I'll have like 6 of them.
No,
honestly.
one strictly. Okay. Because remember, overheating a baby is as dangerous as, in fact, the lack of warmth is not as bad as the overheating. So don't overheat your baby. Don't think because you are hearing them breathing like they have makamasi that they are sick. They're just reacting. Even you, when you breathe in cold air, you usually sneeze or you feel like your nose is stuffy a bit. That doesn't mean you've gotten a cold. So those are just normal things. So just keep moderate warmth. Let them go out to fresh air, to the sun, because they need their vitamin D. Vitamin D is very important for immunity. And many of us mothers are low in vitamin D because we don't go out. So consequently, our babies are also low in vitamin D right from birth. And vitamin D is not only good for strong bones, for immunity as well. So those are the key things that I would, and then go to hospital. Get your baby vaccinated on time. Those are things everyone can do. It doesn't need to for you to be rich, to have all those things in place.
All right, so that's amazing, Dr. Christine Chege. I can literally really relate to this, and I know that many women or many mothers out there can literally as well relate to the same. Because I mean, how many times have you been trying to figure out what are you going to do to your baby? You make phone calls to your mom, you make phone calls to friend, you try go online to search just to figure out how you're going to take good care of your infant. So I'm sure you've picked something that is going to be helpful, and I can promise you that we'll be having more of these sessions. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Christine Chege. Looking forward to another session. And of course, that's where you lock it. Get to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.